Acoustic Alternatives, normally at Grove Studios in Ypsilanti, the place that has been the host of most of the podcasts I've done and the people who actually encouraged me to do the podcast in the first place. I want to give a shout out to them because without them, there is no reason for me to continue doing this sort of thing. If you're looking for a place to practice and get out of your garage and get into a studio, it's an excellent opportunity to take advantage of studio space in Ypsilanti. So if you're a musician or a DJ looking to do those things, check out Grove Studios. But meanwhile, we are in the home of Bob Mervak in Southfield, Michigan. And Bob is my guest today on Acoustic Alternatives with a very special guest, Olivia Dear, who's going to join us for mostly
Small
singing,
world.
I think.
Which is how we met.
This is how we met. Yes. So Bob, I met you as a sideman for Olivia many years ago. There's always a starting point for people's relationship with music, and mine was you as a sideman. However, there's this fascinating side of you where you perform your music, you perform podcast themes, you do songwriting.
I can't make up my mind, really.
Yeah, so we'll get into a lot of that. We'll talk about your backstory. But before people go, what's this all about? I think a song is in order.
All right, let's do it.
A song. What would you like to do?
Right in. This is a song called Today. It's a song I did off a very personal EP back in 2011 or so. And in fact, it's I almost listen back sometimes, and it's so personal, it's almost cringeworthy at times. I didn't think it was that dark, and then I listened back, and I'm like, God damn. Yeah. So a lot of those songs I don't even know if they resonate with me anymore. They did at one point, but I tend to, as is the case with a lot of my recording projects, I tend to like sort of salvage one or two songs off a collection of things, and that I still resurrect in current performances. And this is one of those. There may be two or three off that album that I do, and this is one. And it's called Today. And yeah, thanks Olivia Dear for being here. She's a very busy woman of international mystery, and she was just in Toronto and just in Seattle. I think I saw some. I don't know where she is until I see her posts on Instagram. But she left a cozy home in Royal Oak with a super hot boyfriend who I wouldn't want to leave behind to come do this spur of the moment. All right, here we go.
I can feel it coming. Just one look inside my soul, and I know I'll never die, 'cause I can feel it. Sometimes I get bored with my own face. Time to stop resisting and refusing. I'm long overdue to break myself down and then move on. There's more to see. Why wait around when all it does is break my heart? Is beyond me. It's beyond me. This is all gonna happen inevitably. And we can do it the easy way or the hard way, I know. So I'll take today as a sign that everything's gonna be alright. Hey now, 'cause I can feel it.
Today.
Bob Mervak on Acoustic Alternatives. Tonight. It's obviously nighttime.
tonight.
People can see the darkness in your home studio here. Thank you again for opening up your home to me. And
Delighted.
I know Olivia's been here before. Thanks for joining the Follically Challenged Men Club with your
That's fine.
full set of hair.
Yeah.
No, it's cool to get more varied mileage in this room, you know. I welcome all new projects.
And the Yamaha piano would never have fit in the Grove Studio podcast studio. So we're glad to have the opportunity to do it here. What I like to do in these interviews, Bob, is dig a little deeper than just what's going on today, which would include pianos being abused by microphones.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to talk into this mic. I mean,
It's okay. So where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Southfield or just somewhere nearby?
I grew up in Royal Oak. I was born in Framingham, Mass. I hope this is picking me up. I'm engineer and guest, so I'm being neurotic about the sound here. I was born in Framingham, Mass, just outside of Boston. When I was a little kid, my dad went to BU and finished up some studies there, although he's got roots on Detroit's east side. And then they moved back here when I was really little, and I grew up in Royal Oak. So I have very few memories of Boston, if any. But yeah, I was a life Royal Oaker, Detroit fringe, and went to private Catholic school, and that probably informed a lot of my, emotional issues and values and etc. So, yeah.
How many siblings do you have?
I am one of six.
One of six.
So, yeah.
Where do you fit in the equation? Because I'm the lowest on the totem pole, so I always feel like my opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah. Are you the baby?
The baby.
That's right. You're the baby of three.
Four.
Is it? Of four. Okay. No, I'm the third of six.
Oh. So your opinion actually counts sometimes.
I think now that I'm older, I think they pay attention a little bit more.
Yep,
But
okay.
but no, I was kind of lost in the mix when I was. I'm kind of the youngest of the older three, like the baby of the older three, but the oldest of the lower four because they were all spread out, and so it was kind of like two different eras of families. In fact, like the youngest and the oldest barely know each other, sort of thing. So I was it's weird. I was the youngest of my two. I suffered the plight of the baby, with my two older brothers who were, God bless them, they were cool, they were fun, they were kind of assholes at times, and I suffered that, and then I was kind of the same, kind of cool and kind of fun, and probably an asshole to my younger siblings sometimes, but no, I think I started getting a voice in my family later on in adulthood, kind of interested in what I had to say, but I did yearn for attention when I was little, which probably has informed part of what I do as a performer.
So me being the youngest, I absorbed the musical tastes of all my siblings. My mom and dad were really into music as well.
Mm-hmm.
Where does music fit into your family's history? Were you like the most musical of your family?
I would say so. I don't know on a pro level for sure.
Well, now, I mean, as a child even. Who was the most interested in music in your house? Who got you into it?
Everybody comes in through different doors, so it's hard to know. I envy a lot of other people's perspectives on music and the way they come into it. Some people come in through more of like an emotional door, and some people come in through like a real cerebral door and understand the theory and the structure and are fascinated by that almost in a scientific way. And like, I think I have a little bit of a foot in both those worlds, but each one of us came to it through a different door, and I can kind of see like my oldest brother just gets it, and it's almost infuriating because I studied this stuff for a long time, and and feel like I have a certain aptitude because of the years I put into it. And he took some piano lessons with me just kind of casually for a while, and it blew my mind how he could just see it. It was like the Matrix, like of musical theory. But he's completely on that side of the spectrum, and I don't think he really comes at it through an emotional door at all. Whereas my youngest sister is completely on the other end of that spectrum, like the emotional side of it. And I've heard her say things like she cries sometimes because she can never hear all the music, that's out there. Like, that's a very,
wow.
It's a very deep thought to have. I don't think I've ever lamented the fact that I'm never going to hear all the music.
Yeah.
And so she's real heavy in that regard. I think that's a really good question. Certainly, I think I'm the most developed as a musician. My brother Dan is probably neck and neck with me there, but he's a classical guitarist, so he's way more on the studied side, the prepared side, less improvisational skills and stuff like that. And he's a pro. That's what he does. He teaches, and he teaches at a university in Kalamazoo and does private lessons and stuff like that. But we all play or sing to some degree. But I think probably what gave me a leg up on everybody else was some degree of obsessiveness with it, which got me to a certain level of understanding and skill. And I think I kind of had a foot in all those doors, that I described, the emotional, the intuitive, the intellectual side of it. So I guess maybe I was kind of the most well-rounded and therefore suited to accommodate varying musical idioms and environments and stuff like that, which is what I end up doing now. I think had my sister Ellen gone into pro music or something like that, she'd be more like an Olivia who writes these songs from an emotional place and does one thing so well. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've always been envious of. I kind of feel like a jack of all trades, master of none sometimes. And Olivia and I have gone back and forth about it. She's like, oh, but you can do this jazz gig and you can do a classical gig and you can do this. And I'm like, yeah, but you pay a mortgage just with your own songs, like with your own original songs. And that's it. And that blows my mind. Yeah. So yeah, I think my varied approaches to music have sort of given me an advantage over my siblings, and also informed what I do because I'm kind of all over the map.
Right. So when you were a kid, how did you spend your free time when you weren't like getting ready for school? Were you playing music? Were you playing sports?
Yeah, it was music. Most of the time. Yeah, I'm not athletic much. I get by, but
Do I remember there was a theater background in you as well? You have some theater, like you did high school?
Yeah, I did. I did that. I think my brothers did it, and that's kind of all that was available in terms of music. It was like, I didn't do band so much, and there wasn't a place for piano in band or anything like that. And so it was choral. It was like the choral music that I got into more. It was like, and if you were into choral music, you kind of naturally did the musical theater. Yeah. And I think I loved it then. I don't as much now, the musical I mean, if it's good, it's good. Sure. I don't gravitate toward musical theater as much as, maybe those few years when I was in high school. I think high school is kind of a time to do that. It's very emotional and very dramatic, and
for sure.
Musical theater is also very much that. So,
did you pick the piano because it's the hardest to carry to a gig, or was there another reason?
It was just in the house. We had one. My mom grew up. My dad bought my mom a piano for, I think, as a wedding gift or something like that. And she took lessons for a while. Never really got super far with it, but it was there. And I remember I would do this. I would sit at the piano as early as I can remember, and I would just hit this one key, and I'd listen to the decay. And that blew my mind. Like, it was just, I'd see how long I could listen. Like, can I still hear it as it like decays and decays and fades? And I was like, is it still there? And I think a lot of people theorize that it's always, that once you disturb these sound waves, that they're always there in some capacity. But that's neither here nor there. But I loved that sound, that timbre, and the way, and the way it never gets boring, because it's, a wind instrument or like an organ, you hit once and it's, or something that has a constant tone that doesn't really have a decay unless intentionally. Like this holds my interest more because it's always going somewhere. It's always like on its way to somewhere, and that I think it was that just I was sold with like, and then the idea that you could it's linear and it's all out in front of you, as opposed to guitar where you're working on these shapes and it's more of a mystery, which I also like too. But it made all sorts of sense to me, and I could see the harmony, and I could hear how those notes sounded together and took on different shapes and colors as you played them. So that was it for me. I've always had, a lot of envy for other instruments. I have super guitar envy, because I think it's just such a beautiful instrument, and and it totally gets all the chicks,
Was there ever another path for you? Was there ever I wanted to be a fireman or anything like that you can recall? Not specifically fireman, but you know what I mean.
Little things when I was little, I want to work with animals, want to be a vet, like I think every kid wants to be a vet at some point just because they want to pet dogs and stuff. And
but when you get to more of a decision-making adult phase of your life.
I don't think so. I think I didn't always know I wanted to do this, professionally, or not in a mature sort of way. I think I wanted to be a rock star when I was little, or some sort of star, the attention-seeking part of me, which is very strong. But once I think it was at some point in high school that I decided I'd study it after college, and I didn't know what that would look like, but I knew that's what I wanted to do, and there was no looking back.
Was there ever a drum idea? Because I learned from Ben Folds' book that he was a drummer first and then a piano, and they're both percussive instruments.
Yeah, piano is a percussive instrument. I do, I doink around on other instruments. You wouldn't want to hire me to play them. But I do love drums. I love the coordination that is inherent in all drummers. That seems to be at a different level than everybody else. I sometimes wonder if drummers just get super impatient with all other instrumentalists who don't have nearly as good time or coordination as them, just because it's not required to get by on those instruments. But yeah, I love the percussive element of the piano, and I love piano players that play percussively. I've always gravitated toward Harry Connick, who plays it like, like I studied jazz, and one very common iteration of a jazz group is a piano trio, piano, bass, and drums. And I find a lot of pianos are often floating and sort of like just letting the bass player and the drummer really hold that groove, and they're just kind of floating above it. But people like Harry Connick are equally contributing to that groove, and should be, I think, or at least at times should be making use of the fact that this is a percussive instrument. It's a drum, and you can do that. And I love the way he does that. Who else?
Jamie Cullum, I've seen him do the slapping.
For sure. So yeah, or any or even jazz piano. Like I tend to steer myself in the direction of like earlier pianists like Oscar Peterson, Art Tatum, and sure. I love all that stuff too. But guys who really played stride, that kind of thing, because it had that strong pulse, and you were completely self-sufficient, without the rhythm section and stuff. And people who are capable of creating a groove on their own without the assistance of a drummer or a bass player, I'm really into. So the piano has that potential for rhythm as much as any other instrument. So like, why not?
Was Wayne State your school for?
It was, yeah.
Okay, so was there a time when you were going to school that you started performing publicly during school, or did you start performing publicly after you graduated school? Publicly meaning you're getting paid to get.
It was when I was when I was in high school, I was doing like church services and stuff like that. Okay. So I was getting paid, for funerals and weddings and different. In fact, I remember I think my first one I played at this church in Oak Park. It was a few services, and it was like a Saturday service and 2 Sunday services, and I didn't know I was going to get paid. My choral director in high school said, "Hey, will you go help them out?" And I went and played, and I was delighted just to be able to play. That somebody wanted me, and he handed me a check at that Sunday after the last, and he was like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't be more." And I remember I opened it up, and it was $75. It was $25 a mass, and it was the greatest day of my life, man. I was like, "This is it." Like
I had done that for free, right?
Yeah, right. And I was like, "I'm gonna be rich." Still haven't gotten there yet, but yeah. So I did a lot of that. I would say maybe second year in college, I started playing jazz gigs because I came from a completely classical background. I was always fascinated by jazz and knew I wanted to do it. But man, when I got to Wayne State, what a shit show of embarrassment and humiliation that was, because either these people were really good or had at least some sort of background in improvising on their instruments. And I had no idea how to do this. I just knew I wanted to, but I was starting like back at the beginning, basically. And so it took a good year or two before I felt like I could go into a bar and play a jazz standard and, without, with some level of comfort. So,
well, at some point, as I mentioned earlier, I meet you as a sideman, but you've played an original. You've got 3 CDs that I know of because they're in my hands. I don't know if there's more beyond this, but songwriting is obviously something you do as well, not just cover other people's tunes.
Yeah. Well, one of those is a jazz record that's like all covers.
Yeah.
And then another one is an EP of covers.
Yes, true.
But and so the only one you have there that's original stuff is that, and that's
that's old.
I do love writing songs. I write as far as like my own output that is just exclusively for my own creative satisfaction and stuff that I want to write for me and release. I write at an absolutely glacial pace. The last time I released something like that was 2011.
That's what I have in my notes.
Yeah, and it feels recent almost, but I'm like, oh my God, it's 10, 11 years ago. And, we're kind of on the verge of releasing some new stuff. And I'm like, okay, am I going to do this every 10 years? That's when I'm going to, release stuff. So I wish I was a little more prolific in that area, but yeah, I do write, and I do consider it to be when I'm most creative, when I'm doing that stuff. But certain things professionally come up that my creative pursuits take a back seat to, because I'm not getting paid for them. So
how about another song that you've written then?
Yeah, let's do it.
What would you like to do? And tell me a little story about it if there is one.
I'll do a solo one here. I'll give Olivia a break.
Nice.
This is the very first song I wrote. It was I would have been back in the college days. I think I just decided I had studied jazz for a couple of years. I was maybe 19-ish, 20. I was like, I want to try writing some songs. Like, I was listening to a lot of Randy Newman at the time. It's kind of getting this probably in that neighborhood. I sat down with my friend Tim, who's a bass player who I worked with. He's off in Nashville these days. He's a studio guy out there, but he was just so practical and matter of fact about things. And I said, hey man, I think I want to start writing some songs. And he brought over a pad of paper and a pen. He goes, here, get to work. And I started writing lyrics. And it was about this girl that I was heartbroken about at the time, who had broken up with me a year or two prior to that. And
been there, done that.
Yeah, for sure. As that is not original inspiration. And it's called "I Hope You're Doing Well." And it's funny because years later, after not having talked to that girl, there was this kind of drama that happened way later on. With her dating a friend in close proximity, and it was bizarre, and it's just kind of funny looking back on it. But I still play the song. I almost didn't want to play the song, but my father-in-law retitled it "I Hope You Go to Hell" as I was playing. So I hope you're doing well. But anyway, interesting anecdote on this. But this is the song.
I don't know if I'll write melody that'll make you cry. But if the truth's gonna ever come out, then I just might I know words can get in the way. Lord knows I've said too much. But if there's something I can do, it's gonna make you stay one more night. I just might. But you know I changed my tune in the third movement. But sometimes I can't tell how it's gonna hurt when there's no room for improvement. And you're gone. Just the same, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. You and I will never be anything anymore, and I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, but to sit here and think about you. But you know, I just can't help thinking that the next chance is gonna be the one, or that if I change my life, you'll come running along. Or that one day we'll both be crying at the same song, and you'll hear my voice. But for now, well, all I can say is I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. I hope your angel's shining bright. And I hope you're doing well. You know my smile's hurt for so long, but I think I'm coming round to something real. I took a deep breath and thought of you and cried until I drowned. And now this is how I feel. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. I love you. Goodbye.
Bob Mervak on Acoustic Alternatives. The song that, if you like, track down the album that has the pumpkin on the front of it. Appropriate for October, and it's called Hope You're Doing Well. Just like today, the one you played earlier, also on this 10-year-old, 12-year-old, no, 11-year-old CD. And I got to say, even though that's my favorite song on the record, it hasn't struck me until you're playing it less than a body's length away from me, that could have been a John Mayer song. Maybe John Mayer should cover that.
Oh, funny.
It feels like maybe, is it Dreaming with a Broken Heart that sounds like? Gone, gone, gone. little bit of that.
Kind of the same vibe.
I have to say, I don't think I had heard. So if I was 19 or 20, I don't think I had heard John Mayer yet. That was like right around the time he was coming onto the scene, or maybe even a couple years before.
I don't know.
So
sound influenced by him at all to me, or even
Oh,
his
I was-
musical style.
I mean, I was huge. I was pretty hugely influenced by him, I would say. Yeah, it's funny. I wrote Daughters before he wrote it.
Did you?
Actually, no, I didn't really. But I do remember writing this song just before Daughters came out, and then I was like, "What the fuck?" And it was like exactly the same. And it was so I don't know. I definitely think I was tapping into his wavelength at some point in my life. I mean, I was he was huge for me in the early 2000s and stuff.
I know Olivia's a big fan, and I do want to ask Olivia a question while she's here, since she's one of my favorite people. How did you discover Bob Mervak, since you've been the one who introduced him to me? I mean, where was your point of, I got to play with this guy?
That's really, I totally forgot that you guys met.
Through
that
you.
When we did that show that I was really sick at in his studio.
I mean, Olivia has told our origin story before too.
Yeah. Well, I'm super rich, so I was at this really nice fish and steakhouse with my mom. No, I'm not super rich, but we were treating ourselves at this beautiful restaurant in Troy, Ocean Prime, and Bob was playing the piano. So I just walked up, and I had some business cards made at the time, and I was like, "Hey, my name's Olivia." I think I gave you my CD too.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
I had my EP, my
Wait,
first
did
EP,
you?
because I recorded an EP with Brian I went with Matt and with Brian.
That I don't recall.
Maybe not. Maybe I sent them to you online. But I either way, I gave you my contact. Was like, here, check out my music. I'd love to play with you sometime. I just thought he was really great.
Dude, she was like 13.
I still have
13
the
or
email
something?
that you sent me back.
Oh,
Actually.
no way.
Yeah, I do.
What did
You're
I
like,
what did I say? I don't know. But she
You
was
were
like,
really
she came.
nice.
She was like, hey man. She's like, hey man. Like it was like, yeah. I mean, she was like insanely confident
It was
and
kinda
just
rude.
like it didn't feel like, because sometimes there are those like 8-year-olds who talk to you, who talk like a grown up to you, and it kind of seems contrived and almost sort of like disrespectful or something like that. But like, no, this felt like very much like we were just hanging a little bit, and even at 13. So.
well, it's just like
But-
you meet a lot of like artists at restaurants, or like you hear a lot of artists at restaurants, or just in a place where you don't usually expect live music, and sometimes it sounds the same. Like sometimes people get so used to being a coat rack
Yeah.
at a gig that they just sort of go on autopilot. But every so often you hear an artist in a place, and they're like making minimum what they way less than they should be to play a couple hours of covers, and you're like, holy crap, like who is this person making this sound? And I just remember being like young and being like, I just loved it, so I had to go up to you.
I'm so glad you came up. Because I mean,
Because
all the experiences. Olivia is working with Olivia is one of the great joys of my life and work, and
it's one of the great pains of your work.
it is. But there's joy and pain, and no, but her in going out on the road with her and Brian and James has been, yeah. I always like exercise, working out and practicing are like the two essentials that I've learned throughout my life are, central to my mental wellness and stuff. If I'm not doing those things, it's just not happening. And professionally speaking, if I'm not playing gigs with Olivia, like at least at a certain frequency, I get sad.
It is weird.
It's
It's weird that when we see each other, like even if it's a cover gig lately, it's been like a lot of events and like local places and things like that. Not the touring and the more glamorous things that we used to do that were fun and
Thanks,
still
pandemic.
like, yeah, right. But it's like you'd rather play any place with this guy next to me. So it is weird that I'm like, why are we so bummed out making music lately? Like we still love it, but why are we so bummed out? And then we run into each other and we're like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah, I always feel better after an
There's a
Olivia
direct
gig.
correlation there.
When you were telling me the story, for some reason the lyric came to my head. They put bread in my jar and said, "Man, what are you doing here?"
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, really, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I have gotten a few of those, and I do always try to. I think on all, like to Olivia's point, I never try to phone it in on a gig because the person who will be the most miserable is me if I'm phoning it in.
Yeah.
Not only the listener, but there have been, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. There have been nights when I'm not feeling as motivated to do it, but man, if I like am feeling tired or whatever, or the audience isn't into it, and I start to phone it in, I just become exponentially less happy than if I really muscle through and try to. Because when I'm on a gig like that, I'm playing music for me first and foremost, and if I'm not, then what am I doing there? And so no matter what the externals are, that opportunity is always there for me to do my favorite thing on the planet, or at least ride my favorite vehicle in which I attempt to connect to the cosmos and, love my fellow human. But, so yeah, I've always felt, no matter where I'm playing, it's an opportunity to play music. And, regardless of the venues I've played, like, Olivia and I have played some amazing venues together. I've done some awesome venues on the Armchair Expert Tour and throughout the years, but you never know. Music doesn't necessarily happen there, like that magical moment. You never know when it's going to happen. Half the time, I think some of my best musical memories are usually, in conjunction with some bar I was playing at late at night, and wherever that like real deep magic happens. So anyway, so I always try to be open to that.
Well, you said it's been a decade since your last release of originals. How much time are you making to write original music for yourself? I know you got kids in the house and you're married and you have things to do that aren't writing songs, but do you make time to write songs? Or just...
I'm trying more these days. I think I make a little more now than I do, which is ironic because I do have the kids and I'm busier with other things than ever. But I think I've learned a little more about how important it is to me to make that time. So I do, that ebbs and flows too. Sometimes I do a thing where I get up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning because it's the only time that I can do it before the kids are awake.
And this doesn't wake them?
Yeah. No, because we're in this room that is sort of like off the house, and it doesn't. That's the reason the piano used to be in the living room. We moved in here just because my daughter was born, and I couldn't. The only time I could play was when she was asleep, but I couldn't play because she was asleep.
Yeah.
So, but I make a little more time now. Sometimes a lot. So it's moving a little faster, and yet there's still a lot of if you look in my voice memos, there's like 500 unfinished songs, and there's that thing too, where it's like I'll write something in the car and it never finishes. I'm about as good at songwriting, as completing songs as I am of completing books that I'm reading. I've read like 400,000 half books and stuff, and but which is interesting because you'd almost think that I'm born to be a short form writer with all the partial songs that I've written, which I don't think is uncommon with a lot of songwriters. But because some of the Armchair themes, they're these 20-second, I'm like, oh, that's perfect for me because I never finished anything. So let's write these little snippets. And
you're ahead of me because the next question
is... Yeah, I know, I didn't want to...
Well, no, you're leading me right to the next question, which was about some of the things that you do that aren't performing, sideman, writing your own songs. It's all these other little things that you do in the background that people aren't going to probably notice. So like you mentioned the Armchair Expert.
Mm-hmm. Right? I think most people, probably more people have noticed that these days than most of the other things I do, actually.
Well, that's a lucky vehicle for you to have.
Yeah, for sure.
Dax Sheppard also had you score the soundtrack for the Hit and Run movie, which something that might not have happened if your friend from high school hadn't married him, I imagine.
Right. It was I wrote. In fact, Kristen had started dating Dax, and I wrote her a song for. Her mom recruited a bunch of people to do special things, surprise things for her 1 month prior to her 30th birthday. And I was like, I was day 17 or something like that. So I wrote this song for her called 13 Days Left of 29 and sent it over to her. And she really loved it, and Dax really liked it, and Dax contacted me the next day, and we just kind of became buddies and sort of like symbiotic musical friends since. Like he's turned me on to a lot of stuff, and we tend to like similar things, and then he hired me on a bunch of stuff, and it's been wonderful.
So his podcast travels, and you play with him, or you also write the theme that plays if he's just doing it.
I write the theme. I wrote the original theme, which is to Armchair Expert proper,
right.
Which probably aired for, I don't know, I don't know how long, maybe 8 months or a year before he decided to branch off and do additional podcasts. And now we sort of call it the Armchair Umbrella, under which right now there are probably 10 or 12 shows that he's done, and I've written the themes for all those. And, you know, they're like 20-second themes and then travel music in between. So we do like an extended jam on this theme. So it's not like scoring throughout like you would hear in a This American Life or a Radio Lab or something like this, just because a lot of times there's like intricate sound design and scoring throughout the program. So I'm not doing any of that right now, although I would like to. But just the themes. And so yeah, we've written about 10 or 12 of those. And I'm sorry, what was the question? But
it was, does it only involve touring? But yes, you're writing songs for the podcast.
Yeah, so they use
at his house, like the one you were a part of.
Right. They use those for the show, and then when we go out on the road, and I don't join them for all the shows, but usually it's more regional based. Like if it's in the Midwest, although we did just do a West Coast tour about 6 months ago. I guess it just depends on what they have going on. Sometimes they have other featured artists and stuff, and I will open up with a 5 or 10 minute set of maybe an original or two, and then we'll do the theme as Dax walks out, and it's a ton of fun because it's definitely the closest I've ever been to, like, you know, I wasn't a rock star growing up, and I don't think, like, you know, some of those dreams have like smoothened out and given way to a lot of joy that I experience in what I do as a non-rock star, but it definitely satisfies some of those childhood dreams when I go out there on that stage, because these people are just like so into it, and they're super nerds for Dax's show. And the first one I played, they knew who I was. It was bizarre. I had no idea. We played a show out in LA at Largo. Have you been to Largo out
I've
there?
heard of it, yeah.
That would be your jam.
I don't live in LA, but yes, there's been some good stuff out there.
For sure.
Somebody take me with you next time you go.
Yeah, and I always kind of dreamed of playing at that venue, and that's where we did our first show. And I didn't expect any of, you know, what happened, but I went out there and I was just playing a little bit just prior to the show. We were like, "Hey, Bob," and it was just
How do you
wild.
know my name?
And then, oh man, and when we started playing the theme, you know, hinting at the theme, just the roof went off the place, and it was like, whoever knew for a podcast, you know?
Yeah.
But
I strongly encourage those who are listening or watching my podcast to check out the one that Bob was on with Dax, because it gets pretty in depth with your old relationship with his wife, Kristen Bell, and he asks you some pretty awkward questions, which I'm not going to ask any of those questions because Dax covered them pretty well. So if you want to find out about Bob, Kristen Bell, and Dax Sheppard's weird relationship and friendship, it's a very fun listen. So
good.
I'm going to encourage you to listen to the Dax.
Yeah, he's very good at that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty private, and he's like,
he pulled it right out of you.
Oh my God! Yeah. At the risk of sounding cliche, he makes you feel very safe. He's really got a gift with that sort of thing. So
I try to do it as well, and I'm not asking you to tell me that
You're
I
doing
do.
great.
That's what I do. You told me about an experience that you had, and I tried to find it, even especially after watching that podcast. But when you played the Tonight Show with Kristen, when she was doing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas,"
oh yeah,
they have removed that from the internet, and I can no longer see it.
I
never saw
screen
the
recorded it, so I do have it somewhere, the full version. But yeah, there's like no digital residue of that moment.
The link goes to this is no longer the internet message or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like completely scrubbed off. I think there's just so much content out there that they like. This is going to get messy if we keep all this. So on to the next thing. You know?
Now was that the performance that you and I talked about where David Foster contacted you?
Yes.
So David Foster is somebody that when I grew up was like a god, like producing Chicago albums, and all these things that like this perfect pop music.
Soundtrack to my childhood.
And even his soundtrack work, like the St. Elmo's Fire stuff, and this got like I really admire David Foster. And then he tweets you. Is this what happened?
Yeah.
What's the story?
He just contacted me on Instagram, and it was oh God, and I love. I mean, all the stuff like Karate, this and. The Glory of Love, Karate Kid 2, that was a huge one for me when I was little. And he does, and he's got such a sound, you just know it's David Foster. And the stuff he did with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yep. After Love Is Gone, he wrote that.
Yeah. Yes, I love David Foster, and it was it was completely random. I just did that appearance on the Tonight Show with Kristen, and all I did was play. Like I just played "Have yourself a merry little Christmas," and accompanied her. And he messaged. I got a message from him on Instagram that night. I was like, "Hey Bob, great job on Kimmel tonight. I caught your performance on Kimmel. Great job. You're a great player." And it was just like, had to double check. I'm like, is that the verified account? Like,
is that really David Foster?
And yeah, and I messaged him back, and I mean, like I tend to be like pretty reserved with celebrities and not like show all my cards and play it cool, for lack of a better term. But I completely wore my heart on my sleeve. I was like, fuck it, man. He's David Foster. So thank you, David fucking Foster.
Right.
And I'm like, what? Like, this is insane. I told him, I was a huge fan, and his music was the soundtrack to my childhood, and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't expect him to get back to me after that. And then, and then he said, "Oh, wow, thank you. You sound great, and I'm happy to have had, if I had a small part in that, that's wonderful." He said, "So what are you up to?" And, we chatted back and forth for a while, and it was bizarre. He had there's no reason that, he needs to message anyone.
No,
and,
not really.
And so I felt very complimented by that.
That's a
and
cool
it was
story.
Pretty surreal. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Hey, well, let's take another musical break and have you do a song.
Yeah.
Another one that features Olivia.
Yes. So this is, so we're releasing those, the short versions of the theme songs for Armchair Expert have gotten a lot of attention on social media and stuff. And I've been contacted, many times, like, where can we stream this? Where can we find the live version? And try as you will, there are no long versions out there. They don't exist. They're short format, 20-second theme songs at most. But I love these songs so much, and I don't think that I would do them. I don't think I would approach a project like this only for professional purposes. It's like, as in, there's the Armchair as a podcast is a great platform. Like Dax is very successful, and it's got global attention, and that's great. And basically, I wouldn't want to just what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't just want to be like an entrepreneur, and except that I have such I love these songs so much. Like, I don't think I'd spend so much time on this project if I didn't love them so much. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I've enjoyed writing these songs so much, and they're nothing. The only thing Dax is ever considered with, or is ever concerned with, is does he like them? Does it sound good? Does it make me feel good? Whereas if I do some ad work or something, it's like, oftentimes the first thing I hear back when I do an ad song is, "Hey, we really like it, but it doesn't really resonate with this demographic of people who need to be sold Swiss Army knives," or whatever. And like, I'm like, oh God, how tragic. Like, we like it, but the challenge for most musicians and creators of music is to create something that they like and that other people like and that feels good. And if you've achieved that, then what else is there? But with Dax, it's always like, that's all it is. Do we like it? Does it feel good? And that's always the challenge. I'm not focused on anything else. And so when I do get done with these, I've really worked hard on them. I've really put a lot of thought and feeling into them. I've really tried to like empathize with the characters that he wants to sort of illustrate in these podcasts, and I love them. So nothing has, few things bring me more joy than elongating these and creating full versions, and that's what we've been doing with the last couple that we've written. And we're en route to releasing, hopefully, in the next year or so, like a full length songs that are derived from these podcast themes. So this one was a show. There's a show called Monica and Jess Loves Boys, and Monica is the co-host of Armchair Expert, and Jess is one of Monica and Dax's oldest and best friends, and they both love boys. And they did a limited series podcast on just delving into that issue, talking about boys and relationships and dating and everything. It goes real deep. It's a great show. And this was the theme. And we did a long version of this that hopefully we're going to release in the next couple months, except that Brian Riley and I are agonizing over the verses and obsessing. And I think, honestly, we've had this thing recorded for like a year and haven't released it yet. So,
Does it have a title?
It does. It's called Monica and Just Love Boys.
Oh, well, what do you know?
Yeah. Super creative title. And since I don't have, these songs scream for a bass player and drummer, and since I don't have a drummer, I'm going to try to kind of redo this on this loop station here. So let's see if I can do that successfully and remember these lyrics successfully.
Good luck. We're counting on
All
you.
right, here we go.
Feels like she can't sleep, she can't see, she can't wait. She's got to satisfy the cellular siren. Ooh, that makes her curious, amusing. It stops her, it fuels her, it rules her, it moves her. Monica don't like boys. Monica loves boys. Monica don't like boys. Monica loves. 'Cause all this potential makes him come undone. Yeah, he can't pick just one. Ooh, 'cause all these choices. Everywhere we can't believe his eyes, it makes us smile wide in all the shapes and sizes and colors. They're fighting, he's fighting. They don't him, they want him, he wants them. Just don't like boys. He loves boys. Just don't like boys. He loves boys. Monica and Jess, you know they don't like boys. They love boys. Monica and Jess, you know they don't like boys. They love boys. She feels like, feels like, feels like, feels like. Feels like, feels like, feels like, feels like. Get inside of their eyes and their mind. Each and everyone energize, empathize. Since I want them all around me, think not, regret not, judge not. It's so high. If this is wrong, so be it, 'cause it's what I'm gonna do. Monica don't like boys. Monica loves boys. Monica don't like, you know she don't like boys. She loves boys. Monica and Jess, you know they don't like boys. They love boys. Monica and Jess, you know they don't like boys. They love boys.
Monica and Jess.
Love it. Acoustic Alternatives. I'm John Bob Mervak with Bob Mervak, special guest Olivia Dear in the home of Bob instead of in Grove Studios today because this Yamaha piano, the loop pedal, all this stuff, I don't know where we would have put it in there, but I'm so glad we're doing it here. And I'm so glad that you're giving me some time to chat with you.
Delighted.
And learning more about your history and your career. And there's still a few more things to explore because we're talking a bit about like musical styles and boxes, and you don't really have a box. There's no Bob Mervak. You're trained
I'm working on it.
Well, you're trained as a jazz guy, but you do rock and you do pop and you do scoring and things like that. So like you've got a covers EP that has Springsteen and Depeche Mode, which like that doesn't really define you either. So
yeah, when you're huge, are you a big Depeche Mode fan?
Huge,
Did you
like
mention?
two of my top 10 albums of all time.
Right.
Are
Yeah,
Depeche Mode,
yeah. I'm the Depeche Mode song is spelled wrong on the
I know
EP.
that.
Did you know?
Of course I knew that.
Yeah, that was a big conversation. I left it, and it's kind of like a fun misprint on a stamp. Hopefully, it'll be worth something someday. But,
Yeah.
Anyway,
But if you had to your elevator pitch, like if you had to tell somebody what do you do? I know it's a hard question because there's no.
hard.
I'm a songwriter. I'm a musician. Like which?
I think it's funny because this thing that I'm working on, it's like, yeah, that's a source of a lot of thought and concern and self-critique over the years. That like, what is my sound, and that's comes into the conversation I mentioned that I have with Olivia a lot. It's like, you do these songs and this is what you do, and you're never anybody but Olivia. And
everything sounds like you. I feel like you need to stop you because if you played me 5 songs, I could tell you if all of them were written by you or if none of them were written by you.
Oh, that's good to know.
Not even your covers of anything, like just you writing a song.
When you do hear things too, you have like this elevated sense of like, every time I've talked to you about a songwriter, we were talking about, I think you and I were talking about this one songwriter, and I said, yeah, I love what he does. I feel like and Olivia was like, needs to dig a little deeper. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And you're always right there. Like, exactly, you have a very heightened sense of songwritership. So I'm glad to hear that from you, that you hear like
so
a common
it's
something.
Ridiculous. Yeah, it's so distinct.
But I do think that, so I struggle with that, but I think I used to try to, like have this intention out into the universe to sort of like focus on one area and hone in on it, and that would be my sound. I would get there. But I think I'm realizing that the more I keep doing the varied things that I do, that starts to filter in to a sound. So I'm kind of taking the opposite approach now. And as I do these armchair themes and this record, it incorporates a lot of the things that I get into. It incorporates a lot of like funk and R&B and like whatever, blue-eyed white boy soul, and gets into some more tender songwriting too, and a lot of 80s pop, which I was hugely obsessed with. I wish I had all the recordings in front of me, but there's actually one of the podcast songs we wrote ended up having this sort of Dylan-y vibe on it. It was like honey, you're my best friend, and I think that we've got this. That's the direction it went in. But the original one I wrote for that was this, it had a super new wave sound. I used this old analog drum machine on it, and it was like, it was like, honey, you're my best friend. And it was very much that. So anyway, that's 80s pop is definitely at the core of my, of what I'm romanced and seduced by, as a listener. But as I do this, it really is starting to almost sort of congeal and coagulate into a sound, I think. And I'm very excited about that. Because all I did was I just did everything I know, instead of trying to focus it into one sound and trying to like worry about what voice was going to rise to the top, like what unique only Bob thumbprint was going to come to the top. I just did everything that I do, and then that sort of started to come out on its own. And I don't know, I'm not done with the record yet, but I'm feeling like it's getting there, and it's something. I don't know. It's not R&B, and it's not funk, and it's not 80s pop at all, but it does sound like something.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's a partial answer to your question.
It was a
It's
catchy
like,
song.
What is it?
And
I wanted to. Did you ever get into Swing Out Sister? Do you have that?
I have
in
the box
your-
set of the entire collection sitting on my desk right now.
As I was playing that, as I've been playing it the last couple of weeks, I feel like that started coming out a little bit. That was one of those particular
I didn't pick
80s
that up.
bullet points that it reminded me a little bit of. You got to find a way, say what you want to say, work out.
Breakout.
You remember that one, right?
Breakout, yeah.
Breakout, workout once.
Workout is something you do in your spare time. Well, actually, the song that you just played.
I need you here to correct all my
No, you're good.
bad references.
The second song reminded me of a John Mayer thing. That one, that could have been a Justin Timberlake song, or could be.
Oh, cool.
Maybe you should start writing songs for other people.
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, because I would hope that you'd get attention for doing them yourselves.
I think I did get the
yourself.
Justin Timberlake vibe out of that one too. It kind of reminded me of the whatever the one he does on the Trolls
I'm
soundtrack
not
that was a
sure.
big hit a year ago or
I've got
whatever.
this. You got the.
You know. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Can't stop this feeling.
I got this feeling
Yeah.
inside my bones.
That could have been what I heard.
Oh, we're not allowed to. I don't think we're allowed to play.
Only bits.
Those
If you
types
do
of-
too
Okay,
far,
all
then we
right,
get
cool.
then we get in trouble.
Just referencing.
So you and I went to see a concert just a little over a week ago. We saw Diana Krall,
Yeah.
which was amazing. The band was awesome. She was
Killer.
awesome.
Kareem
And-
Riggins on drums. Oh my God.
Jeez, he was great. But I realized that she essentially has a career of playing other people's songs.
As most jazz artists do.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no reason that you're not as pretty as she is, and you're not married to Elvis
Sure.
Costello. But I
Sure.
think there's no reason that you couldn't be at the same level. And I don't really. I've been in the music industry since 1985, and I never quite understand why some people can do that well and succeed, and other people can write great songs but still not sell as many records as she has. I don't know if you have a grip on that either.
I think in the jazz world there are tons of singers, but there are not a lot of instrumentalists who also sing. I think she's a rare breed, and I think she's a very good piano player. I don't think she's the level of like a Brad Meldau or, I mean, I'm not trying to disparage her in any way, but
Eric Connick, your favorite?
right. But I've noticed that like since there are so few like piano player singers in the jazz world, there are Michael Bublé's who like rise to stardom and stuff, but there are very few like people who play piano well and sing well. You don't need to be, your piano playing doesn't have to be at the level of a Brad Meldau if you sing well. You can almost do like, you can almost get there with like 70% of each, and I'm not saying that's Diana Krall. I think she's an
She's
amazing
fantastic.
musician
No, I love her.
on both. Could stand alone on both. But I think, in the jazz world, there are very few of those, and I think a lot of them do, achieve a relative degree of success because of that, because it's so rare. You have a lot of great horn players, a lot of great drummers, a lot of great bass players, a lot of great piano players, not a lot of great people who play like jazz on an instrument at a certain level and sing at a certain level. I think they're starting to happen. I see them out on Instagram. I see a lot of these like multi-instrumentalist singers who are pretty amazing, but I think, maybe I could have gotten there if I focused on standards alone. And I think that's one of the places where Diana Krall, one of the things she did right is that's what she did. To my knowledge, she didn't do a whole lot of anything else. She made records of very familiar jazz standards and played and sang them.
And some not, like Tom Waits and things like that. She squeezes
That's
that
true.
in.
Yeah. She does them in a very jazz standard
Right.
sort of way.
Right. So when you do a show and it's not doing them in a standard way, like both you and Olivia have reinterpreted songs and put your own stamp on it. And I've always been fascinated by people who can, like you're Enjoy the Silence, for instance, is really nothing like the original and it's in the way that we've heard it. So as a musician trying to reinterpret somebody else's song, I just can't get my head around hearing it a different way. And you guys always come up with these really creative arrangements. How do you do that? I mean, is there an answer to that question? I have no idea.
I think I'm usually inspired by the song itself. Because a lot of times I'm inspired by, I like something because of the way it was recorded, the way it was performed, and the song. Most of the things that I did on that EP were because I heard this song underneath all the production. Sometimes I think the production gets in the way of the song almost. I did Love Bites on there.
Yeah.
It's like super studio produced, kind of a very specific era in late 80s, early 90s glam rock.
Sounds like a Mutt Lange production because it is.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
He has a stamp. It's
Right.
like the David Foster stamp. It sounds like a David Foster.
That's right. Mutt Lange did write that song. But having Def Leppard perform, it also sounded like a Def Leppard song, I thought, because Def Leppard performed it. But I wanted to take it. I just felt like there was something else to be said that you don't always hear when you're listening to their wailing guitars and his like beautiful, pristine tenor voice. And I won't usually do a cover unless I do feel there's something additional to add.
How do you arrive though? You just strip away it in your head.
I love taking the production away from it, and that's what I did with that one. Is just play them on solo piano. And a lot of these pop songs, even ones that I love, I don't think necessarily could stand on their own without being held by the often very well done production that's on them. But some of them, I'm like, oh man, that can totally stand on its own. And sometimes I think it almost stands on its own a little better when you take it away. Like when I heard Diana Krall do, well, I guess most of the things she was covering were actually pretty scaled down to begin with. But the Aerosmith song, first I sang it an octave lower. I think there's a reason why people don't ever cover Aerosmith, because nobody can fucking sing it. Because only Steven Tyler can sing it. Like, he's just a freak of nature. But I think singing it down the octave helped bring this more like weary sort of sound to it. There goes my old girlfriend, there's another diamond ring, all those late night promises, guess they don't mean a thing.
Yeah, it takes it to a different place when you bring it up. Right.
I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but for me, there's a certain mood to a certain type of performance, but all of a sudden I hear, and a lot of times I don't hear it till 20 years later after listening to that song forever. I'm like, oh, there's something else in there, and there's a real sadness in there, or there's a real, if you had somebody at the mixing board and instead of like, low, mid, high, they had like happy, sad, funny, and all the emotions on the dials, like the sadness or the happiness or the something in there is very low, and I want to turn that way up and turn the rest of them way down. And so I sort of create a version that really honors that little bit I heard in there, and I'm like, oh, I'm just hearing it a little bit. I want to put that under a magnifying glass and really amplify that, and that's kind of what's on there. The only exception being the Cars song that I did. I did a different version of it, way different than the original, but I don't feel like I really had anything new to say with that one, only because the way they do that, the way the Cars did that on the original, the "Who's gonna drive you home tonight," is just so fucking perfect, and you couldn't do a better job of it. I don't, and that's the only one on there where I was like, I'm gonna do it because I love it.
Just keep it straight.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Well, one of the things you told me, like in a conversation weeks ago, that you got to rework was a Donovan's song.
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
It was
Maybe your final story before we play another song here.
Kristen and Dax have a baby product company. I want to call it a diaper company, but there's so much more. called Hello Bello that they created few years back. And they've been growing that company for a long time, and it's, you know, all these organic materials, and it kind of came about like right after they started having children, which was just before my wife and I started having children. So we started using their products, and I felt, you know, I was at that point in my life where that company was on my radar, not only because my friends owned it, but because it was very practical to me and my purposes. They did during the pandemic, they did this camp Hello Bello, and I was contacted by the agency, a guy named Ben Hart, who runs the agency that handles all the promotion for Hello Bello. And they were doing this virtual camp for kids. Hello Bello was, you know, they were telling stories and reading books and having sing-alongs and stuff like that. And he had me write the theme for this virtual camp that Hello Bello was doing. And we kept in touch. That went real well. And I did a couple other things, you know, that they did for like pandemic outreach to kids. And then they decided to do, I think maybe their first or second national commercial. And he asked me to do the music for that. It was Kristen's idea to use Mellow Yellow, which rhymes with Hello Bello, but sure instead we're going to use the words Hello Bello in the chorus, you know, to call me Hello Bello. And so they got the rights to that song and had some conversations with Donovan, and I rewrote all the verses to reflect parenting struggles, be it about changing diapers or cleaning up spills or whatever. And just in this, they just wanted to promote this idea that we're a community that supports each other, and, you know, we got this, you know, we're all in this together. And so I wrote a lot of lyrics to suit that, probably about 19 verses of different things, and they were sent to Donovan to approve, and he approved them. And I think he was a fan of the company because he's a very, he's kind of an environmentalist at heart, and he likes that they're using these biodegradable, sustainable materials. But so I got to work on this, and they sent me the original masters, stems from the original Donovan recording, which was awesome to listen to. And I got to like really get inside there and do surgery and find out exactly what they were doing in there. And we came up with a new version of it, and they did this long, I think they did a 60-second spot, a 90-second spot, and a 30-second spot. So we had quite a bit of material. And we just kind of we built on the original and made this big orchestral version. It was a lot of fun. I'm still pining to talk to Donovan now, though, because I have so many questions after like getting in bed with that song for like 3 months, you know.
But now he knows you exist. There's something that didn't.
On some level, yeah, he must, because he was reading through my lyrics and approved them, and that's
a cool story.
So yeah, for sure.
All right, so you got a record you're planning for next year.
Yes.
You're doing occasional original shows. If we get lucky, this podcast gets produced and put out before the Trinity House show, which is coming up a few days from the day we're recording this.
Correct.
If we're lucky, people will see it beforehand.
Yeah.
But as we were prepping and getting the studio ready, you were showing me a little video that I'm not sure is available for public consumption yet.
No, it will be.
Will be, though. And that's the song we're going to close with. Tell me a little bit about this one before.
This one was written, Dax's wife, Kristen, and Monica, the co-host to Armchair Expert, did a podcast about womanhood, feminism, supporting the women, basically, talking about womanhood and all that implies. And they asked me to write the theme song. I was not anticipating being asked to write this one, because I just thought you should probably get a woman to write and perform. So I was deeply honored by that. My wife was a women's studies minor in college, and sort of opened my eyes to feminism and the feminist movement, and turned me onto some books. Bell Hook's book I read, and really got me online with that. I think that I think the seed was always there in me. And not that I was necessarily a misogynist or womanizer or anything like that, but I didn't pay particular attention in the way that I wish I would have been brought up to. And so I think the seed was always there, but my wife sort of, fertilized that seed in me. That's kind of a reverse, isn't it?
And she has 2 kids to show for that. For the
Yeah.
reverse.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. So I was, I don't know. So I nerded out on a lot of feminist writings and stuff like that when she was in college, and was so excited that they asked me to do this but I also felt like a huge responsibility because I'm not a woman. I haven't lived. I can only attempt to empathize with the things that women deal with on a day in, day out basis, and I can read about them and attempt to empathize with them, but I cannot truly walk in the shoes of a woman. So I was very honored to be able to even attempt to come up with something for this show. They did, however, want a woman to sing on it with me, and that ended up being the great Sara Bareilles.
Which I can't believe, which is pretty awesome.
And here she is, John. No, I'm just kidding.
I've hugged her before, so this.
Very cool. Oh, yeah, I think you mentioned that. Where was that?
Borders. The station I used to work for, we did 2 different events for her first album, and we did 2 different events.
That's too cool.
Borders.
So is that when she came with that?
Yep. I got to actually do one of those 2 interviews. So.
You did get to interview her too.
Yeah, I did. She wouldn't remember me, but yeah.
Oh, too cool, man. Kristen is friends with her, and asked Sara to be a part of it, and Sara was amazing, and sent me these, made time to do this in her busy schedule. Mm-hmm. I sent her the track. I sent her some lyrics. Tried to put it right in her lap, make it easy for her, so she didn't have to spend any time, figuring it out. And she sent me back an hour later. She sent me back. I just wanted her to take a crack at singing a lead, and she sent me an embarrassment of riches. And she sent me 9 vocal tracks or something, and sort of arranged background vocals and wow. Multi-tracked all this stuff. It was amazing what she sent back, and it was we didn't have to tune a thing. I mean, her pitch was almost that of an Olivia Dear, and we mixed it all together, and it was
compliment. Yeah. We're very pleased to have Olivia Dear here singing the Sara Bareilles.
Yeah.
What's the song called?
It's called "We Are Supported By," which was the name of the show. It was originally went by another name, but there was a conflict with another podcast of the same name, and so it eventually became "We Are Supported By." And it was amazing. We had so many people contribute to this, including the choir, the Academy of Arts, the Detroit Academy of Arts and Sciences choir. A bunch of young girls who sang on this, and it was so fun to work with them. And one of them rapped the rap that is in this, and that I'm going to have to do myself because she's not here, sadly. And it was cool. We were in the studio, and I had Kristen FaceTime them, and they were all excited to see Kristen, and she thanked them for recording on this. But it was, to throw a cliche out, very much a labor of love, very sincerely. And here it is. Another one that I need a bass player and drummer for, but we're going to make do with what we have.
Gonna get inside, gonna turn it up, gonna break it. We're gonna feel it all, ain't gonna let you fall, gonna make it. We're gonna raise our hand, gonna raise our voice, gonna break it. We're gonna lift us up, gonna sing out loud, gonna stand up tall. Oh, oh, oh.
Hop on in, come on and get it where you're going to. And it might look different than it used to. You've been hearing it all for such a long time, but I'm gonna make it feel like it's the first time. Yeah.
We're gonna get inside, gonna turn it up, gonna break it. We're gonna feel it all, ain't gonna let you fall, gonna make it. We're gonna raise our hand, gonna raise our voice, gonna break it. We're gonna lift us up, gonna sing out loud, gonna stand up tall. Don't play it safe, come on, I need the good stuff, yeah.
I've been watching you and you've got more than enough. We ain't gonna push, we ain't gonna shove.
Here we go. Just gonna remind you it's you with whom you're in love. We're gonna get inside, gonna turn it up, gonna break it. We're gonna feel it all, ain't gonna let you fall, gonna make it. We're gonna raise our hand, gonna raise our voice, gonna break it. We're gonna lift us up, gonna sing out loud, gonna stand up tall. Check it out, we might work from home, or maybe grab a microphone. Might travel to lands alone, find my throne, never be afraid to choose to be alone. Look around, gotta find your zone, feel it in your ribosome. No apology of mine's a blown the throne, but I'll never be defined by a chromosome. Malala, Simone, Bell Hooks, Emma Watson, Obama, and Oprah, Mary Wollstone, Gloria, Jermaine, gotta find a Jane, Naomi, and Betty Friedan, yo, say the name. We're gonna get inside, gonna turn it up, gonna break it. We're gonna feel it all, ain't gonna let you fall, gonna make it. We're gonna raise our hand, gonna raise our voice, gonna break it. We're gonna lift us up, gonna sing out loud, gonna stand up tall.
That is really a great song.
Yeah,
Thank you.
He's really good.
That's gonna be something when people hear that. I can't wait for it.
Oh, thanks so much.
Bob Mervak's the guest today on Acoustic Alternatives. 2 quick questions, movie related. Favorite song from Frozen?
Ooh, God, I think I did have one. Can it be Frozen 2?
Sure.
The one that Christoph sings that sounds like a Chicago song. It's I think it's called "Lost in the Woods." Have you heard it?
At least once.
Oh, it's
probably
it's killer. The Chicago vibe they get on it. It blows my mind. That's hands down my favorite.
All right.
Why? I wonder why.
Kristen. The other one is relating to you being in a movie, which I watched the day after I hung out with you because I hadn't seen it before.
Oh, no way.
The Ides of March, which George Clooney did in Detroit and Ann Arbor, right?
Yes, sir.
How did you end up in the movie? And in the first 5 minutes, I believe.
I got a call from. I was just practicing one day. I was at this church practicing, and I got a call, which I didn't recognize the number, so I don't even know why I picked it up because who picks up numbers they don't recognize? What a psycho!
You.
Yeah, me apparently. Call me. It was a guy who I had never met, and he said, "Hey, will you go audition for? Can you audition for a George Clooney movie?" And it just sounded bunk. I didn't know who this guy was. I think he was trying to make some dough off it. He said if you get the part, I think he pretended he was an agent. It was really sketchy. Mm-hmm. So it was already suspect, but I was like, screw it. I'm not doing anything that Saturday. I'll go audition for this George Clooney movie. I don't even know. I didn't know if I was going to show up and I was going to get kidnapped or something like that. But I showed up to this, to some office building in Warren or something like that. And I said, I'm here to audition. I saw a handful of piano players I knew, actually. I said, why not go in there and do it? And I played a couple jazz standards, and they videotaped it. And they called me like a week later, and she actually, I didn't pick up this call, and she left me a message. She said, "Hey Bob, it's so and so," and I remember because I was just so excited to get the call because it was really surreal, and I was about to go meet my wife inside Red Coat Burger for dinner. You eat
Red Coat Tavern,
Burger?
yeah.
Ooh, yeah. And she left me a message. She said, "Hey, Bob, it's the name of this agent, whatever." She said, "I'm wondering if you want to be in a George Clooney movie." And by that time, it seemed legit and real.
Because other people had auditioned.
Yeah, and I went in and got my burger and told my wife, I was like, "Hey, so I'm gonna be in a George Clooney movie." And yeah, in a few weeks they called me, and every moment of that experience was pretty surreal because one of the producers called me and said, "Hey, we're wondering if you want to come down for a rehearsal with George and the boys." That's what he said, with George and the boys, meaning George and Ryan Gosling and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Marissa Tomei and all these heavy hitters. And it was wild. And he picked out 3 standards, I think, to do. His aunt was the famed Rosemary Clooney. So he grew up. He told me he was her driver. I guess he used to drive her to gigs when he was a kid. And so he, grew up in that jazz scene and knows all these tunes. And he picked 3 tunes, and we shot them, 4 or 5 times, and hung on set for a couple days, and it was amazing.
Where was that bar scene?
That was at Cliff Bell's in Detroit.
Looked like it probably
they renamed it something else in the movie. It was not Cliff Bell's.
No,
but
that's
some fictional bar.
Cool story.
Yeah, for sure. There's a video that Ryan Gosling taped one of the videos on his iPhone, or one of my takes, and he goes by and you see George Clooney behind the monitor while I'm singing, and then you see Marissa Tomei, and then you see Phil Seymour Hoffman, and then he focuses on me, and it was 2011, so I wasn't on Instagram. I don't even know if Instagram existed then. I was on Twitter, but wasn't really savvy. I mean, it wasn't really happening then, but he posted that video on Vimeo, I remember, and I saw it, and I thought it was so cool, and then he took it down like 3 months later. I literally I've agonized over finding that video. I'm like, I need that. Like I need this weird video where I'm hanging out with these people I'll never hang out with again for my own selfish social media purposes. But try as I have not been able to track it down. So
Bob, that's a great story. And thanks for all the stories and the time. And Olivia, dear, thank you for contributing vocals. I have to say, one of my favorite podcasts I've done since I've started was the one I had with her. I just felt like we had a really good conversation, and I felt like I did a nice job of painting the full picture of what Olivia is. And today I tried to do the same with Bob, to see just what an incredible career you've had, even though you may not be a household name. I mean, even in the Detroit scene, you don't really do a lot of gigs as Bob Mervak.
I sleep better.
You don't really even have a website per se. You have sort of.
He's
I mean,
king of Detroit.
you're
Don't let it fool
you're
you.
under all the radars, but you've had some great things, and I felt that all that needed to be highlighted. So thanks for letting me spend some time with you. There's more questions, but we got to stop.
Thanks,
I'm not even sure there's any battery left on my phone.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Thanks to Grove Studios for at least hosting my videos, and normally hosting me in their studios in Ypsilanti, and hopefully you can join me for the next 2, which are scheduled to be, maybe a third one in there, but Chuck Brodsky is planning on joining me for Chucky, and Glenn Phillips, who you might know from Toad the Wet Sprocket, is a guest in the November month too. So some great podcasts coming up, but what a pleasure to be here in your home, Bob. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, John.